Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to WAQF, a game changer. This is a 4-part series that we are doing during Ramadan to educate you, the viewer, with regards to the importance of WAQF and how WAQF has really played such a huge role in the way we help communities and in so many other projects from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam up until now. The legacy that has been left not just by our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also the Sahaba that succeeded him, and of course so many other great personalities that have taken it forward. We've understood just how it started as, from the tiniest contributions to now bigger ones that are making such a huge impact in the lives of so many. And joining me now, of course, in this series, and I have the pleasure of even understanding it from myself, is none other than WAQF, South Africa's very own Zainul Kaja. Uncle Zainul, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and always a pleasure having you back.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Faraz, and thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
I think, let's just recap, the sessions before we go to session 3 and 4, Uncle Zainul. Just how much of a role did, from Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, from Hazrat Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, and so many other Sahaba that gave their contributions towards WAQF for where we are right now, and the understanding of its importance from an Islamic perspective.
Okay, so Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. From the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and with his mission of transformation, came several institutions, and one of those very important institutions was the WAQF system. And the WAQF system, as you said, was really a game changer. So that made a major contribution to Islamic civilization, which is something that we will discuss in this particular session. So you found that most of the Sahaba, in fact, there's a historical record that every Sahaba that had some form of wealth made a WAQF endowment. So these WAQF endowments were what we would now also call as Sadaqah Jariyah, where one would get, where there would be continuous charity, perpetual charity, and also perpetual reward, the Thawab Jariyah. So we would get rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this particular type of special charity. So if I can remind you that, or remind the viewers out there, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that all our good deeds will come to an end once we pass on, except 3. And the first one was, he mentioned Sadaqah Jariyah, which is the WAQF. And then secondly, beneficial knowledge that we leave behind, whether it's scientific knowledge or any other knowledge that can benefit human beings or animals or mankind in general. And thirdly, the pious children that we leave behind. So our youth development and youth that we leave behind that are going to continue praying for us and also serving the deen, for that too we will be getting rewarded. So that's just by way of putting into perspective the importance of WAQF as a sunnah and as one of the very important social pillars of Islam. And as we say, that WAQF is the most powerful, sustainable, and strategic, empowering and enduring voluntary Islamic charities. So I think from that point onwards, we've discussed various aspects in previous episodes, previous sessions, definition of WAQF, its origins, its contribution, the various terminology that we use in the whole WAQF vocabulary. So, and now we also would like to discuss the contribution and that WAQF has made to Islamic civilization.
Before we touch on Islamic civilization, the worldwide view of Islam, of course, you've got Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam going to all corners of the world, spreading the deen. But at the time, of course, it's very unknown to many parts. But something like charity, something like a WAQF, that in itself, I mean, there must have been a change from a global view, because we're at a time in the world where you've got rulers and kings who are all for themselves. But here we have Islam, this beautiful religion that changes everything, and you can add WAQF to it also, which allows for communities to prosper via this.
Okay, so basically it boils down to the Islamic worldview. So Islamic worldview starts off with Tawheed, and that is the fundamental foundation of Islam, the Tawheed. Not only do we say about the oneness of Allah, but also the sovereignty of Allah, that here we have our Creator, and we as the creation are supposed to be just subject to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to follow His rules and regulations and so forth. And then secondly is that whatever we have doesn't belong to us.
Of course.
It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now there's a complete change of mentality in terms of what is it that we have, to whom does our possessions belong to. Lahu ma fi samawati wal ardi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continuously tells us that to Him belongs the heavens and the earth and everything that's in between. So now we have a situation that in our psyche and in our mentality and our attitudes to life and so forth, we know that whatever is given to us, whatever we have, our rizq, our mentality, our intellectual capacity, the gifts that Allah has bestowed on us, are basically a trust to us. It's an amana, and we are supposed to use that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for His love and for His pleasure. So in that sense now, all these institutions that are created around Islam are institutions that we need to actually implement as part of our Islamic culture and civilization.
Islamic civilization, it stretches from everything to anything, from agriculture to science to understanding how we need to be as human beings. That in itself is a beauty that nobody can take away from Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And Uncle Zainul, when you look at the understanding of WAQF, these elements right over here contribute to that, don't it?
Absolutely. So your Tawheed, our spiritual development, our morality and ethics, the social justice that Islam promotes all the time, the unity and brotherhood of the Ummah. So, caring for others, and fundamental is also the notion of compassion and mercy, because that's, fundamental is as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent as a mercy to the entire world. So when we absorb all of that into our beings and into our lives and into our whether it's at the level of our homes or at the level of our communities or at the level of our governments, then these values are embedded, and we are encouraged to promote them wherever we are. So these values have actually created what we have now, these institutions, and how in terms of Islamic civilization, culture, our belief systems, what we do in our daily lives, these are all influenced by our fundamental beliefs of Tawheed and so forth. So,
Uncle Zainul, I want to touch on the lasting legacies, and a lot of it, a lot of people would say it's universities and scholars, they would be the ones that, leave that lasting legacy, but it's not always the case. Look at how farming was supposed to be done, and it's through a WAQF system. We look at how roads, and all of that has been done. It's a WAQF system, so that people understand that when you're doing something, it's not just for the pleasure of Allah, but it is something that will help the community, not today, but in 10, 15, 50 years' time, maybe even 100 years' time.
Yeah, so when we talk about this Islamic civilization, then we talk about the entire ambit of buildings, our art, our architecture, our culture, the institutions that we build, the manner in which we go about doing things. So, and all these together, the scholars that we produce, the literature that we produce, the libraries that we establish. So, in that sense, WAQF has actually contributed tremendously to all these facets and assets in the community. So, for example, the first university, mosque university, that was established was by a woman in Morocco, in Fez. And that became a university where even people from Europe came to study. They came to study the language of Arabic. They came to study mathematics, astronomy. They came to study philosophy, medicine. In fact, that mosque created a school of medicine as well. So that was one of the first universities. And of course, we mentioned in one of our earlier sessions, we had Al-Azhar and other universities as well. So knowledge as part of our civilization becomes an important thing, not only religious knowledge, but knowledge about the world, about agriculture, about farming, about the water conservation and water systems, actually. I mean, we had one of the most advanced water systems in, for example, Andalusia, yes. You know. So, wherever we went in the Muslim world, we would find water fountains. I've been to Bosnia, for example, and in the center of Sarajevo, in one of the squares there, you'd find a water fountain that anybody can actually get, water from. So, what about hospitals? You know, there were various Bimaristan, as they were called, in Morocco, in Syria, in many other parts of the Muslim world, where for the first time special hospitals were created, hospitals for people with disabilities, hospitals for people who had special kinds of sicknesses like leprosy. So, the notion of creating institutions that will serve humanity, and these were all free of charge. Anybody could actually access them. And so it was also with schools. Many schools were established where our children could come and learn Quran, and also not only Quran but worldly knowledge as well, whether it's mathematics or science, technology. They would be able to learn it at these schools, free of charge. So, the WAQFs are there to sustain the community, sure, to fund institutions.
Because that's why I'm going to have to stop you there, because we're just going over time. But after the break, we continue with session 3 on WAQF, a game changer. Welcome back to WAQF, a game changer. We are in session 3, coming to you this beautiful month of Ramadan, understanding just the importance of WAQF, not only for us as Muslims in South Africa, but from a global perspective. And I'm still in conversation with Zainul Kaji. Uncle Zainul, the decline obviously was something that, put a lot of Muslims at the time in a somber mood, because you've got the rise of colonialism really coming in and enforcing rearing its ugly head. Talk to us about how that really changed so much, not just in the Muslim countries, but also Muslims that were in other parts of the globe. And of course, we're going to be touching on South Africa in a bit.
Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I think we've had sporadic growth, phenomenal growth of the WAQF system over the centuries, from the time of the Prophet ﷺ right up until the 19th century. So in the 1800s, that was the time when the colonialists started occupying, invading Muslim lands. The colonial mentality was basically of superiority, of wanting to land grab, of wanting resources in other parts of the world. And we know that colonialists had some kind of agreement, Treaty of Versailles, where they divided Africa, they divided the world into different nation states, and they were all going to land grab in certain countries. And their approach was always, we're going into a certain country, we're going to help you develop your territory and land and all of that, and eventually they take over. And this is the kind of pattern that we've seen all over the world, whether it was in Australia, New Zealand, and the Middle East, especially in North Africa. So we've had the French going into North Africa, into the British coming into various other countries, into India, Mauritius, and African countries as well. So what they've been doing is, over time, they've been denigrating the whole WAQF system. They've been sort of decimating it in the sense that telling the Muslim community, downgrading the whole WAQF system, and then expropriating land.
Sure.
So in that sense, a lot of the WAQFs were actually confiscated or expropriated. There are examples in different countries of how this actually happened in Tunisia. In all the French territories was actually the worst. I think even in Lebanon, where France took over, after the First World War. So now we find that in various countries, including Muslim countries, the WAQF system is either nationalized, where assets are actually taken into state control. In Malaysia, for example, the entire WAQF system is run by just one mutawalli, that is the state sultan. So he has control over all the WAQFs. That has sort of discouraged people from creating new WAQFs. So in some cases, it was also about mismanagement and theft by unscrupulous people. But primarily, when the colonialists came in, they disrupted the entire Sharia system, and they disrupted Islamic culture and civilization. So, which now changed language, which changed the rules and regulations, imposing their laws. So, which really resulted in a situation where the whole WAQF system actually almost disappeared from the Muslim mind, from our daily living, and which was really very much part of our everyday living. So if we wanted to make WAQFs, it was like people just made these either through their wills or through their, during their lifetime, they gifted land or they gifted property or they gifted some form of asset, as a WAQF. But colonization actually decimated the entire system.
Uncle Zainul, I want to touch on the Ottoman Empire, because even though at the time of colonialism we've got the Ottoman Empire, which of course as an Islamic empire is still maintaining the WAQF system. Talk to us about that, and of course up until their eventual decline, which happened just after World War I. How are they able to go ahead and really manage WAQF and still keep this beautiful system alive?
Okay, actually, some of the rot actually started during the Ottoman Empire.
All right, yeah.
It was in the 1950s that, or rather the 1850s, that in Egypt, the Pasha there, the minister, took all the WAQFs in Egypt and put it under his control.
So it's state control.
State
by
control.
a government. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, up to today, even Al-Azhar is under state control.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, so the Ottomans, as we know that, closer to the beginning of the 20th century, it started deteriorating, and I mean, the Ottoman Empire was actually the haven of WAQF.
Of course, yes.
A haven of WAQFs. So there were WAQFs for literally everything in the Ottoman Empire. But that's where the rot set in. And after World War I, when Ataturk took over, they nationalized the entire WAQF system. So all what was there in the so-called cash WAQFs, for example, where people used to be, the microfinance system, all that entire asset base was put into the WAQF bank.
Yes.
So up to today, that bank still exists. It is also well known that during the Ottoman Empire, all the education, welfare, and health was actually funded out of the WAQF system. So a very important system was actually decimated even by the Ottomans. So it's only today that things are changing a little bit.
Sure.
But unfortunately, with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire came also the collapse and desecration of the WAQF system. In fact, the Ottomans really had a wonderful system of what was called the caravanserais,
Yes, yes.
which were also called hospices, where traders used to traverse these vast territories where they could actually stay overnight for 3 nights at a certain lodge. They would be fed there. Their horses and animals would be taken care of, and then they could move on. So these were the kind of facilities that the WAQF system had provided. But unfortunately, we are in a situation where where in certain countries, like in India, for example,
Sure.
you've got the state control over the WAQF board. In Mauritius, a small country, also they created special laws, a WAQF Act, a WAQF board in Kenya as well. So the British also had some form of managing the WAQFs in a very tight, narrow way, where they would neglect the WAQFs. They would go into a derelict situation. So, rentals were not kept to market levels.
Course, yeah.
So, the income levels would actually drop. So in that way, the WAQF system actually, I wouldn't say collapsed, but it actually was in a tremendous state of decline.
General, in 2 minutes, and I think when we look at history, we'll understand just how key WAQFs were in preserving the Islamic lifestyle. And that was no different to, of course, the rise of many of these Islamic countries within North Africa. When you look at, of course, even West Africa. And that was the glue that kept everyone together, wasn't it? Even though you had colonialism at the time, they still held on to that belief that when independence would come, this would be something that they would return back to.
Of course. So we had one of the fundamental institutions in Muslim countries or Muslim lands was the mosque. Together with the mosque were the schools, the madrasas, the whole learning institutions. As one of the scholars said, that WAQF has always been a shock absorber.
Yes.
So even though Muslims declined in certain ways, the WAQF system always was there to support the community in different ways. The imams, the scholars, even the WAQF set up for salaries for the muadhin.
Yes.
And even for the one who said Qad qamati salah, there was a WAQF for that particular person. So irrespective of the decline, it didn't get to an extent where there was absolutely nothing left.
Sure.
Because some of those waqfs were always there, and they were always there to fund. Over centuries, there have been ups and downs in the economy, and in those instances, the waqf system provided that kind of support. So whether we would like to call it, the funding base or the sovereign fund of the Muslim Ummah, which was always there to support the Ummah in difficult times. And as in fact, I'm actually quoting the governor of the Reserve Bank of Indonesia,
yes.
and he said that this waqf system was really the shock absorber of the Muslim economy.
This is how we end session 3. Up next, session 4, which will be our final session, as we look at the revival and the future of waqfs. Do stay tuned.